Welcome to This Week from the Principal's Desk, a podcast about Lutheran schools and their leadership. This podcast is hosted by two Lutheran school leaders. My name is Rob Lunak, and I'm the superintendent of Lutheran Neighborhood Schools in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
My name is Mike Sheeman. I'm principal at Bethany Lutheran School in Parma, Ohio. And Rob and I have been having a lot of fun doing these podcasts. And we thought, someday we're going to run out of topics to discuss. But it's not today. And when we were talking about, well, what should we record on? Rob and I had this revelation. We've never actually talked about staff meetings. And that's something that's just so regular, I would say, in a principal's agenda, in the work that we do, that we were actually a little bit surprised we hadn't hit this topic yet. But we thought, then let's hit it. Let's talk a little bit about staff meetings, because, of course, we know one of the most valuable resources that we have is time. And God has given us time to use wisely for Him. And we do need to have staff meetings in order to schedule things, in order to collaborate with one another. But there's so many ways that you can use staff meetings, and so many ways that both Rob and I have used them and seen them used, that hopefully this is just something that's going to spark your interest, or maybe get you thinking a little bit about various ways that you could conduct staff meetings that are going to be beneficial for those with whom you serve.
Yeah, I don't know how we haven't talked about staff meetings or faculty meetings before. Not once has it come up, but it's definitely something that all of us will have experience with. And all of us, I think there's two minds of it, right? Some people love those meetings because, we have so much fun and we get so much done. And then some people are like, I don't really like meetings. I don't like making the agenda, and I don't like talking about this stuff. And we're here to make it all a little easier and help focus some of that for you, so you can be more in that first camp. So you enjoy them and look forward to them, and find a way to make them a bright spot and less of it's 3:30 on a Thursday. Now we got to have this hour-long meeting, and I just want to go home. There's definitely days when that happens, right? We understand that, but we would like to try and find some of those highlights for you and give you a little bit of practical insight to make those a little more palatable, in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think there's an art to knowing what your staff needs. There's been times where I usually do a schedule at the beginning of the year. Here's our full schedule of staff meetings throughout the year. But there's times where I'll look at it and say, anything that I would put on the agenda, I can just send out in an email. There's no point gathering people to read them something that they are capable of reading on their own. And one of the best things that I've been able to do is if I see that, you just cancel the meeting. There's no point in just meeting for the sake of meeting. Now, that talks a little bit maybe about content regarding your meeting. So first off, if there is something that can be emailed out, do it that way. Everybody appreciates that. Your staff can read. They're very capable of that. And if they don't read it, you'll know really quick when, Mrs. Smith comes down and says, I didn't know we were having a fire drill today. Well, I sent that out. Read your email. But there's so many things, though, that can't be communicated by email. And I would argue those are going to be the main framework agenda items for you in a staff meeting. Now, you do want to look at things on a bigger level. I really enjoy using staff meetings for collaboration. Let's talk about some trends in education and how is this going to impact how we respond as a school. Let's take a look and say, what, we maybe need to do a resource refresh on some of our curriculum material. Let's collaborate on that together. Let's do these things, and let's hear people and hear their opinions and hear what they have to say. Staff sometimes feel like, maybe there's not time for that either. Well, couldn't we just talk offline about this? But it serves two purposes. One, it gives you a big topic to talk about, which is good. You want to continue those big topics in education. Now that we're out of university, we're reading books, we're doing all these things. We still need to engage. But the other thing that does is it builds some teams, a commitment of team to your staff. You get to hear one another, hear some of the experiences people are having in the classroom, and really build relationships among your staff through some of these topics. So I would argue that there's the agenda, but then there's the hidden agenda of how are you using this time to really build relationships on your staff.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most important part of a staff meeting that I would say most of us don't do all that well, is it is team building. Every opportunity when you have everyone together should be a little bit of team building, because you're going to need that capital later. Think of it. Don't even think of it like, you care about them and you love these people, which you do, and you want them to enjoy their time together, which you do. But if you can't even look to that, look past that and, pick the selfish route and go, okay, well, it's going to help me later. If they all get along now, these meetings are going to run a lot smoother. When we get to difficult things, the temperature is going to stay down on those because we know they care about each other and we know they like spending time together. So definitely anytime you can build in little things like that to keep them connected as a team, definitely take advantage of that. As teachers, we don't often spend time with other teachers. We're in our rooms a lot by ourselves, and so we have devotions in the morning. Maybe we have some time in a teacher's lounge. Maybe we have time after school. But for a lot of us, we're all together in our faculty meetings, in our staff meetings. And so definitely take that time to build those relationships and to build up that community. The other thing I'll point out with a faculty meeting or a staff meeting, I'm of the mind that they should be two separate meetings. You should have decision-making meetings and you should have input meetings, and do not put them together. Because here's what happens. You're as a principal, you're going to bring something up and you say, hey, I want everybody's input before I make my decision. And you don't know what the input's going to be. That's why you want it. And then it's going to go a certain way and you're going to go, okay, great, I'm going to make this decision. And that might be entirely counter to all the input you've just received. So what you're saying to them is, I don't really care about what you're saying to me. I just want to check this off the box. Yes, I asked you. Check. So please, if you can separate those, separate those. Go into a meeting and say, hey, today we're going to make X decision. We've already talked about it before, a week ago. Okay, everyone had time to give me their input, but today we need to make that decision. Or you go in and say, hey, no decision's going to be made today, but I need to know what everyone feels about this. I heard something great in an audiobook I listened to last week that I'm going to give out to everyone because I think it's such a good idea. You will give one person on your faculty a card, and you say, this is the dissenter's card, and you just hand it out randomly. You are going to disagree with everything we say today, okay? This is your card. You get it, and you're going to pass it around because we know that sometimes certain teachers will fall into that role naturally. I fall into that role naturally. I'm the, well, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm the, well, what about this guy? That's my thing, right? So pass that around, and then everyone else, you're going to give cards like, hey, ask other questions, further questions, just a little like roadmap on what to do during that discussion has been so helpful. And it was such a great idea when I heard it, because you're going to get a teacher who maybe will never speak up, but if they have the card and they know I'm supposed to be the person, you're going to get an idea that maybe you've never heard before, and a perspective that maybe wouldn't come out naturally because maybe they're shy, maybe they don't want to drag the meeting out, whatever. But now they have kind of a mandate. No, you have to be the person who disagrees. So just a little practical tip that I heard in an audiobook that I had to share.
I love that. That's getting implemented right away here. Rob, I think you really hit on something though. This idea of decision meeting or being separate, I think that's really important. And if there's any way that you can prepare these things ahead of time, send stuff out to your staff and just say, hey, we're going to be talking about this particular thing. Here's some stuff you can read up on. Here's, what we've done in the past. Here's how that might need to change for the future. Give them time to think and process that. I have a lot of processors that I've worked with. In fact, that's me. If you dump something on me right now, I probably won't make the best decision, but if I can think about it and most importantly, pray about it, I'm going to be in a better spot to do that. And so is your staff. Now, that could frustrate the people on your staff that are like movers and shakers. Like, seriously, we need another week to think about this. We've talked about it for 10 minutes. We should be able to move and do this. But I think it shows that you're valuing people as well, that, you know what, we need to decide this, but we need to really take some time to look at it. So one of the ways that we manage that here is if there's something that's coming up. I actually started a Google document I started about 2 weeks ahead of the staff meeting. And I open it up to the whole staff and just say, this is our staff meeting coming up in 2 weeks. Here's the agenda. Here's what we're going to be talking about. You're welcome to add anything you want to that agenda as well, but please put your name on it, because if you put it on the agenda, I'm going to let you lead that section of it. We'll talk about it, but I don't want to be surprised by anything or have anybody surprised as well. Sometimes then you'll get to that point though, where, okay, you've talked about it, you've thought about it, and now it is time to make that decision. You are going to make a decision that probably will be in line with what some people are thinking and not in line with others. Well, I'm going to tell you, I had one staff member, and this was about 10 years ago, and just out of the blue, she came up to me and she said how much she valued our staff meetings, which surprised me because I didn't get that sense from her, because I had just made a decision that was not something that she was happy about. And she said, but Mike, what you did was you listened to us. And she said, I know you knew what my disagreements were with that decision, but I understand your side of it. And while I would have chosen something different, I can get behind you because you heard me. And what we had walking out of that meeting, even though it was not full agreement, is we had unity because they were heard so they could get behind the decision that was made. And that's really important, I think, for any staff, is to make sure that you are together in whatever you do. So hearing your staff, letting them speak up can build that unity even in the midst of disagreement. And the staff meeting is the place to do that. So you do want to create an atmosphere, a culture where people feel comfortable voicing disagreements, voicing concerns, because they know that everybody has the same vision and everybody has the same goal. So in the safety of that room, we can have tough discussions.
Yeah, and the thing is, people are going to have those discussions whether you give them time to do them in the room or not. They'll have them. You just might not know about
Hmm.
them. So definitely make sure that that's the place they do that. I would always explain to teachers there are three kinds of decisions. There are decisions you will make that you don't need input from me on. There's decisions I will make that I don't need input from you on. And then there are decisions that we will make together. And being able to lay those out for people. So if somebody comes to you and says, well, we need to talk about this, you can look at them and you go, that's not a group decision. That's my thing. We're not actually going to talk about that in the meeting. We can talk about it right now, me and you, but it's not going to be a productive use of our time if everyone wants to talk. If we want to talk about it with everybody. And sometimes you hear, well, everyone wants to talk about it. They just sent me. They can send themselves to my office too. We don't need to have. If somebody says, well, other people are saying, they're probably not. Or it might be like one other person, but I guarantee it's probably not a group of people. So if you ever get that and they want to talk about something during a faculty meeting, make sure that that falls into that lane. And there's two reasons for that. One, just delegation of authority and who makes those decisions. And two, you want to keep those meetings productive. And if you're going to talk about everything that bothers everybody in every faculty meeting, you will never get anything done because we are
Hmm.
human. We get on each other's nerves. Well, the third grade wasn't so loud going past my room. We need to talk about that during the meeting. No, we don't. No, we don't. Well, I didn't like that there were quesadillas for lunch today. We need to talk about that during the meeting. No, we don't. No, we really don't. And so make sure you have a filter for some of those things. And having them put their name on it is great because no one's going to hide behind the, well, other people. No, it's just your name. This one's just yours. Why don't you explain it? I would always open up at the end of every meeting, other. It goes on the agenda as other. And I say, okay, anything that anybody wanted to talk about that nobody had time to get on the agenda ahead of time, we have, I put a time limit on it. We have 10 minutes to talk about anything else you want to discuss. And I start my meetings on time and I end my meetings on time. I wait for no one. At 3:30, we're starting with a prayer, whether you're here or not. And if somebody is habitually late, you got to go talk to them and you got to deal with that. But then I also say we're going to be done at 4:30. Well, we have things to talk about. Great, we'll have another meeting. We can do that, but we have to respect people's time and you have to control the flow of that meeting. And that means handling disagreements, like Mike said. That means that there's going to be times where people don't get along and don't have the same outlook on things. But you want to make sure that everyone feels heard, everyone feels respected. And then you can disagree in the meeting. The second we make a decision, it's a group decision. It's something we are all doing and something we are all supporting. You can't go on a road trip and then give two people the steering wheel. It does not work. Okay?
Hmm.
Everyone's in the van. Great. Did you pack your sunscreen? Here we go. But only one person's driving. And in those meetings, in those decisions, when those are done, you're all going in the same direction.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk then a little bit about how do you change it from we're having a staff meeting to oh to yay, we want to get people on board. How do you create that environment of enthusiasm for a staff meeting? Well, for me, I mean, food does it every time. I don't have the budget to feed the staff the whole time, but it is kind of nice to think you can use staff meetings as a time to celebrate your staff, to thank your staff, to create an environment. You're hosting your staff during that staff meeting, and you want to make it comfortable for them. So you want to think it through about, like, Rob, I totally agree with you. One of the best things that I ever did was set an end time to the staff meetings and shared that with the staff and said, no, we are done at this time no matter what. You're really valuing their time, and they know that they can make other commitments and so forth after that time. But where are you having the meeting? Is it going to be in a teacher's classroom? Is it going to be in the cafeteria? Is it going to be in a staff room? Where is that happening? And then making sure that you're prepared, of course. Do you have the technology that you need to have the meeting? Do you have the collaborative tools, whatever else you need to run that staff meeting? So think about ways that you can do it in a comfortable environment for the staff. The other thing I like to do in staff meetings is I do like to celebrate the staff. So to say, hey, I was walking around the school and I really liked what I saw when I walked by the fourth grade classroom because the teacher was doing this. Try to kind of keep a list of shout outs that I do with the staff. Their Lutheran humility is like, well, I was just doing this. And you're like, no, 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 that's actually worth sharing with people. You did a really good job with that. So be able to celebrate your staff and share that. And then they also know that I typically ask the question and leave it open ended. So not that everybody has to share every week, but what was one way that you saw God at work in the life of your kids at school this week? And if you can continue to focus that staff meeting back to the mission, it sets the tone about why. Why are you discussing these things that, maybe they matter, maybe people feel like they don't, but we're doing this to serve students with the gospel. So let's start there. Let's start with that focus and really set the tone for the meeting. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. You have to be creative, I think, in your own context, but I think it's worth having that thought process of how do you turn meetings from a burden to a joy? That's just a fundamental question.
Yeah, and that's a great thing to focus on because the purpose of the meeting is generally not giving information or gathering information because you can do that over email.
Mm-hmm.
You absolutely can do that over an email or a form. You don't need to bring everybody together to say, hey, I want to tell you guys all about. Not a good use of your time. But that stuff where you're building community, where you're recognizing the good things people are doing, where you may be problem solving on something, that's really what those meetings are for. And Mike, I love the idea of those positive things because so often faculty meetings can turn into complaint sessions. I've been there. Where it's like, oh, we're going to, I'm like, okay, this is not how this is going to go, guys. We gotta change this because these are miserable. And so, yes, that recognition is awesome. There are principals I know where they get on a rotation, so everybody brings candy. And it's like, oh, it's my week to bring candy to the staff meeting or whatever it is, bring treats or whatever. We had a little trophy that we handed out, and it was based on our core values. So you weren't just like recognizing something nice you saw someone do. We tied it back to our core values and said, if you recognize somebody exhibiting this, you could give them that trophy. And if you got it, you had to give it the next time. So that gave everybody an opportunity to share it. I had somebody come up to me, well, this person hasn't gotten it yet. Are they not living the core values? Is no one just seeing it? Not everybody needs to get it. It's not a checklist. Those recognitions are not checklists. Yes, as principal, you want to be able to include everybody, but you're also building people up so you can include everybody, and you're not just giving not everybody gets the trophy, right? It's not that way. But yeah, Mike, I absolutely love that idea.
Yeah, it's just something that a lot of people think we don't have time to meet about this kind of stuff. And in some cases, I agree. There's certain things you don't have time to meet about those things, but there's other things that you need to make the time because it is a priority. And how we work together, how we serve together as the team that God assembled in this place, that absolutely should be a priority. So let's then talk a little bit about the team members themselves, because everybody does bring different gifts to the team. And so how can you grab hold of those gifts and use them with your staff as a whole? Now, that could be a whole podcast in and of itself, but just for the sake of touching on it here, one of the things that we do is we have professional development plans for our teachers, and they're differentiated. We do very little all group professional development together because I want people to grow in the areas of expertise. But then one of the things that I require, as I'm sure most principals do, is if you've learned something at a conference or something that you've done, you come back and share it. So we've used our staff meetings to have the teachers share about the new things that they've learned. And that's been a huge benefit because the teachers themselves get up and get in front of a group of adults, which surprisingly, a lot of teachers aren't comfortable talking in front of a group of adults. Kids are fine, but put them there and they get all nervous and everything. But give them the chance just to share about something that they've learned in education. Other staff, knowing that that teacher is an expert in the field, so to speak, will come to them and use them as a resource. So you're building capacity of your staff, and you're using the staff meeting as the vehicle to do that. So I encourage you to think about how else can you involve your staff in leadership roles in staff meetings? The other thing is that if you are able to do that, maybe you have a teacher on staff that you think could be a great principal someday, or maybe you've identified them as a sled candidate or something like that. Get them to run them because you want to be able to share your leadership with others so that others can grow and they too can become leaders as well. So there's a few different ways in schools that you can do that. And I would argue that a staff meeting is probably a really, really good thing for you to train somebody up to do and then step back and watch them lead.
Yeah, you should be able to ask this question. How is our school better because we had this meeting? And if your answer
Love that.
is, well, we went over the calendar already existed. No one didn't know those things. How is your school better because you had that meeting? And that means that sometimes we have to look at a meeting and we got to go, that was terrible. And we need to make it better. And as principal, it's your job to make it better. And you can distribute that leadership however you want. Absolutely. But the buck stops with you. Was the meeting poorly planned? Was the meeting poorly run? Was the meeting something that could have been an email? And a great way to find out how everybody feels about that. This is something that I'm not a huge fan of, but I'm going to say it anyway. Anonymous feedback on meetings. It's an exit ticket. You could do a form, plus minus delta. Here's the things I liked. Here's the things I want less of. Here's the things I want changed. Don't put your name on it. Because people will say things in a meeting when they are speaking freely, which you want them to do, and you want them to know that none of that is going to be taken personally. So when they put their name, I didn't really like how this thing went. Signed, Susan. And you go, okay, if it's nothing personal, it's just like, I wish we had the agenda earlier, or I think we spent too much time on whatever, they're going to feel heard. And you need to, especially if you're new somewhere, you need to almost do it anonymously first so they feel comfortable knowing they can say something to you and they can put something out there and you're going to take it well. Because realize if you are new at a school, I literally had a teacher say this to me when I was in my first call. Well, you just got here. I've been here 30 years. And it's true. And so she's like, what are you going to come in and change things? Yeah, I'll be here before you go. She retired before I left, so I made it. But but there are times for it. And I am such not a fan of anonymous feedback, but this is one point where you can do an exit ticket and they don't need to put their name on it. And it helps you guide those decisions a little bit. One of the things I'll tell people about feedback is it honest? Is it useful? And a lot of people will say kind, and I don't go with kind. I go with nice, because if it's honest and useful, it's already by definition going to be kind. But did you say it in a way that wasn't hurtful, right? So you can say to somebody, hey, I just want to be honest with you, that meeting didn't go as well as I wanted it to go. I think we could have done this thing. And that's a nice way to say it instead of, well, that was a really dumb meeting. So I always remind people, is it honest? Is it useful? And is it nice?
I love that. I think it goes back to what we were saying about, we want this to be collaborative. We want to hear from our people because we are serving the staff who are serving the students. So one of the things too, Rob and I just did a podcast recently on ways to use your benefits of professional organizations. And you can grab a lot of the things that are out there and bring them into your staff meetings if you're looking for topics that are going to engage your staff. One of the things that we actually have done for our staff meetings here is I've given the staff homework. And I think this is an okay thing to do. They have time to read an article or read a chapter of a book, but we actually took a series of our staff meetings and we went through a book called Reclaiming the Joy of a Church Vocation by Daryl Zimmerman. And this is out of Grace Place Ministries. And it's something that I would encourage you to have a look at, because teachers talk a lot about, we don't have time to do these things, or retired or whatever. But joy is so important. And so we took our staff meetings for about 2 months, and we would read a chapter before each staff meeting. We would start the staff meeting with the questions at the end of the chapter, which were really helpful as far as focusing our meetings on the joy of being a church worker. So we can include that resource in the show notes, but that's just another way to look at meetings to be able to build people up, because I do believe we need to spend time in the Word as a staff as well. And sometimes you can easily think, we do have some big topics to cover, so we don't really have time to spend, together in devotion. We'll just do a quick prayer to start the meeting. I would argue now you don't have time not to spend in devotion. That is the core of who you are. So I encourage you to take that time. You can use a resource like we did here with this particular book, which was a great focus for that, but spend time, intentionally build in time to be in God's word. That's really going to set a tone for your meeting as well. Because, we've talked a little bit about how these conflicts, they will happen. People will not always see eye to eye. You are going to have those staff meetings that are going to turn into train wrecks. It just happens. But if you have the mindset going in of, we are in this together, we are a team that God has called and assembled and put in this place. When those things happen, you're going to be better equipped to deal with that. I've had to do it in staff meetings where they're starting to get heated. We need to pause and we need to pray right now. And let's just do that. And it kind of sends the signal that, Mike thinks we're in trouble here. Well, yeah, I do. And what do we do when we're in trouble? We're going to go to the Lord, because I'm not going to let Satan snake into this one and cause division. And so if people are feeling undervalued, if people are feeling ill-equipped, I'm going to remind them that they're not, because they've got Jesus in their heart. And that's the true source of joy.
That's such a great takeaway. It was that the Martin Luther quote, I have so much to do, so I'm going to spend an hour in the morning in prayer or something like that. I don't know the exact quote, but he's like, I'm so busy, so I'm going to pray first.
Yep.
That's really,
Exactly.
really, really helpful. One other thing I'll say, if you have a meeting that you know is going to be a little contentious, is I would time limit that. Hey, we're going to spend 10 minutes for discussion on this, and we're only going to spend 10 minutes. And if you have things you want to say later, you can come talk to me. That's fine. You can totally get your voice heard. But in this meeting, because we have a lot of things to cover, and because I know this is going to be a little contentious, and because our ability to remain kind only lowers as meetings go on longer, just because we're human, I would always limit that stuff. Hey, we're going to talk for X number of minutes on it. I'm going to set a timer, and then we're going to be done. And those things, it almost sounds like people would be like, well, we're going to need so much time to talk about it. But I would always explain it this way. If we spend an hour on this, we'll take the whole hour on this. And our decision, I can't guarantee, is going to be that much better as if we took 20 minutes on it. And so you need to know when to use that and when to take advantage of that, and put a clock on some things. And maybe you go, hey, I thought 20 minutes was going to be enough, and it's not. But instead of lengthening that time, we're just going to table this. We'll come back to it. It's on the agenda now for this other meeting, or maybe we'll have a special meeting if we need to. And then that gives people some distance. And that distance is always nice. And that's another thing that prayer does. And that's why that's such a great piece of advice, is it gives people a little bit of distance from whatever the meeting topic is. And we could probably do 5 podcast episodes on meetings, Mike. I'm realizing this. We've gone on and on and on. But I think this is a good time for some prayer.
I agree. I'm going to share one quick thought before I do that, because I learned from you in this one, Rob. I love the question you asked. How is my school better because we had this meeting? And I encourage anybody, I'm going to write that down, and I'm going to think about that before every single meeting we have. And if people take one takeaway, I think that was the golden nugget right there. So you hit that on the head. So I encourage you to think about that, and then let's do it. Let's go to God in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the ways that you continue to bless all those who serve in school ministries. Lord, you call teams together, and you equip people to serve in the roles to which they've been called. Yet sometimes being in teams, being with human beings, is just messy. And we just rely on your promises that you are faithful, that you are in every single meeting that we have. You are in the trenches with us. And I thank you for that. I thank you for the hearts of people who have that they have to serve. And that even though sometimes things can get tense, God, that's because that there's a passion for people who have the same goal, and that's to share your love with kids, with families, with communities, with people all throughout the world. So I pray that you would bless principals as they continue to share, and principals as they continue to lead. I ask that you would bless teachers as they continue to serve, and that together you would put teams in place that are strong, that are heading in the same direction, that they have their eyes firmly fixed on you. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of From the Principal's Desk. If you found it helpful, please share it with someone else that can help. If you found it entertaining, please leave a rating or a review. And if you want to hear more episodes like this, subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a good week.